Hello there. I'm going to be demonstrating a method of rendering a 3D character model from 8 perspectives for use within a two-dimensional isometric game. I found this process on an old post on opengameart.org. I found it pretty useful. There have been changes in Blender since the tutorial was written, however, so the hotkey shortcuts listed and the provided script would not work in the modern version of Blender, in my case 3.6.5. So I've had to update the process a little bit, and I wanted to take notes on that. I figured, since I'm new to Blender and I don't know the UI very well, leaving myself notes that include my clicking around would be much more useful to future me and anyone else who's interested in watching this than a simple handwritten thing, especially since the UI changes and functions in Python get deprecated for the API. Before I go through this, I would like to attribute people whose resources I've used, including the tutorial, but also including this model here for the human and the stone texture I'm using. So for the tutorial I'm basing this off of, there's user Venetian Bears, who showed, you can see each line here, animation frames of the model running in some direction, and then the camera changes to be in different sides of the model, and it just renders those frames again for each facing direction of the camera, not so much the character. The character's staying static. Anyway, like I said, I was able to follow this and use this as a template of what to do. So that was extremely helpful. Thank you, Venetian Bears, for that. For the stone texture here, user Para, also on opengameart.org, made that, so thank you. And then Clint Bellinger made this human model that I'm using. I'm using the male model right here. Both of them are combined in this zip file here. Anyway, with that out of the way, I'm going to show exactly how this works and try to set up a project from scratch that does the same thing so I can show the process. So essentially what's happening is you have a model you want to capture, and you set up a ring above it, you attach a camera to the ring, and make it so it follows it in a circle. I had to clamp the camera to the circle. That wasn't something that was in the original tutorial. I don't know if that's changed between Blender versions or what, but that was a problem. Essentially, you're going to want to have the camera follow this Bezier circle, or Bezier, however you say that, and you're going to have the camera also track an object inside of the character. And you can make that object not actually render or display. It doesn't really matter if it displays in the viewport, it matters if it gets rendered in the scene. So if I go to right here and I go to the data object, I can actually show the viewport. So here's the box right here. I can actually select it because it's unselectable right now. I can click that. Now it's selectable. That's what the camera is actually tracking as the butt of the camera goes around this loop. So as long as it's not renderable, it shouldn't be in the scene when it renders. So I'm going to go to my little script here. The difference between my script and theirs is that mine will take all of the keyframes of the animation. You can see there's 4 of them right here, marked in yellow, and it only renders the keyframes. But it does it from the 8 perspectives of the camera. You can imagine there's 360 degrees of rotation, so every 45 degrees you're going to get an angle. Front, back, left, right, and all the 45-degree angles between the diagonals. It's important to note, too, that what is actually captured when you're rendering isn't what I'm seeing right now in the viewport, it's what this camera sees. If I hit 0, you can see what the camera sees. You can also make a new camera and rebind whatever the default camera is by selecting it, doing Control 0, kind of like binding a bunch of sprites in StarCraft or something. Anyway, so let me show exactly what this is going to do. I want to go to here where I have the script. I want to make this a little bit smaller. Show a little output folder here. So you can see there's nothing in here. Right now what I have it set to do is I'll call my function, and it's going to output to this directory here with another folder in here called human. So I'm going to render this, and it's going to move the camera in 45-degree angles around the scene, targeting the box while doing so, while following the path of the circle. So I'm going to click it so you can see. You can see it's going around, and as it does, it's taking pictures of it. And right now, I actually have it on test mode. I'm going to take it out of test mode. Oops. Something to keep in mind, like right here when I was typing, you can see it works, but if I move the mouse over here, nothing happens. So what your input is based on where the mouse is. That's kind of important to know. It trips me up sometimes. Okay, so you can see it created the folder up here, and inside the folder, it has 8 perspectives, and for each of the 8 perspectives, there's 4 frames. So you can see 4 frames here, 2, 3, 4, and then it changes directions 1, 2, 3, 4, changes directions 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I look at the, see exactly how that looks. So is it rendering that direction? Okay, another direction. Now it's to the right. Okay, now it's walking bottom right. You get the idea. Anyway, so that's based on the keyframes, and it also is based off of the angle I'm moving the camera to around the curve here. So I want to show how to set that up. I'm going to make a new scene here. Go new. I'm going to go general. Don't save. Okay. And actually, you know, I'm going to go back to that for a second because I need to grab something out of that. I'm going to grab the code here just for future use. Okay. Hello. Okay. New. General. Okay. And before I lose that, let's go to scripting. I'm going to go new. I'm going to paste my code in. Okay. I'm going to put it into test mode if it isn't already. It's already in test mode. Cool. So let's set everything up. I'm going to go into modeling. First of all, I want this object to be smaller. Let's scale it down. I clicked it, and then I hit S to scale. And then what I'm going to do here, once you scale and you unclick it, you can actually toggle the dimensions over here, which I think is pretty nice. Okay, so now I have this tiny thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more cubes around this one. First, what I'm going to do is add a cube to track. So I'm going to do Shift A. I'm going to do, wait a minute, Shift A. There we go. That's weird. It usually gives me more options than that. I can pick a mesh than cube. Huh. Anyway, scale it down with the S. I'm going to put it inside the other one. So you can see it's inside this other one. Okay. And before I continue, this new cube that I made, where did that go? Oh, it's inside of that cube. That's weird. I didn't mean to do that. Is it? That's a bit weird. Why is it not? Is it because I had it selected already? No, it isn't. Why am I not getting the same? Just because I'm in modeling instead of layout, maybe? There we go. That's why. Okay, cube. Sorry. New to Blender. Anyway, I'm going to shrink this thing. Okay. Go in here. Shrink it a little more. Doesn't really matter a whole lot, but shrinking that. Okay. So I'm going to call this cube to track. Doesn't really matter what it's called, but I want to be able to know which one it is, because what I'm going to do is add a bunch of other objects around here so this thing is asymmetrical. That way when I'm rotating 45 degrees, it'll be obvious that it's actually working. So I'm going to keep doing Shift A, I'm going to do Mesh, I'm going to do Cube, I'm going to shrink it. Okay, doesn't really have to be perfect, so resize. I'm going to make this one small, I'm going to make these two a little bit bigger, stretch them out. Yeah, that's fine, okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing again, Shift A, I'm going to go, yeah, Mesh, and Cube, and shrink. Okay, shrink that way, and then let's make it bigger this way, a little smaller that way. Okay, now I want to go on top of it. I'm going to rotate. Oops, gotta select it. Rotate. Okay, now let's add another one. Cube. Okay. Make it longer. Thinner. Thinner on this way too. Okay. And we're going to click out of that. Let's rotate it. There we go. Let's add one more. Okay. Gonna do mesh. I'm gonna go cube, and we're gonna shrink it with S. Okay. I want to scale it. Shrink these. Okay. R to rotate. And actually, I'm going to make this one, I'm going to scale it again. I'll make it a little bit longer than the other ones. Just so it's really obvious what's happening in the scene. Yeah. When I'm rendering that, it should be pretty damn obvious. It's not the same one. Let's do that. Okay. That should be good enough. So now what I want to do is I want to add a Bezier circle, Bezier curve, whatever. So do that. And I want this to be positioned above the scene. So I'm going to hit G to grab it, and move it up. Now that that's happened, I can do this. I can set the X and the Y to be 0. I can move the Z wherever I want. Now I can actually click on it. Actually, I'll wait to do this because I want to show you something. Let's look at the camera real quick. Okay, so now I have the camera and the circle both in the same scene. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit tab on the circle after I have it selected, and I'm going to select one of the vertices that's closest to the camera. I'm going to grab this one. Could have been this one too, it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to grab that group. Now if I do Shift plus S, it brings up this menu here. I want to do selection to cursor. Oops. No, I don't. I want to do the opposite of that. I want to do cursor to selection. There it is. Okay, now the little circle's right here. I'm going to hit tab again to get out of that mode. I'm going to click on the camera and Shift S again. And this time I'm going to do selection to cursor. So now it's on the cursor. So now what you might notice is if it actually tries to take a picture of the scene here, it's not seeing anything. I need it to look down at the model. So in order to do that, even if I make it track properly, I'm still going to want it to be further out. So I'm going to scale the circle to make it a little bigger. Okay. And of course I need to mess with this again because of that. So Shift S, let's do cursor selected. Hit this. Actually got out of the edit mode tab. Okay, Shift S, selection to cursor. Okay, it's on there. Now, what I want to do here is hold Shift and select both the camera and the circle. So now if I do Control P, I can set the parent of the object. So now one is the parent of the other. And this is going to matter when I do some rotation. I'm going to rotate the circle, and the camera is going to be clamped to it and follow it around while it tracks this. So now it's actually set the constraints on the camera so it'll clamp and it will track properly. So constraints, and I'm on the camera. I'm going to add a constraint. I'm going to do a, where is it, clamp to. Okay, what I'm going to clamp to is the circle. So I need it to clamp on the z-axis. Okay, and then add another constraint. I'm going to do a track to. And this is where I'm going to track to that invisible box. I haven't made it invisible yet. Actually, I'll do that in a second. But right here, I'm going to do the cube to track, I called it. Okay, so now it's looking at it, see? And you got to make sure that the track axis is negative z, and the up direction is y for this to work. Okay, let's go to the cube to track here. I'm going to go to the data on it, find that object, viewport display. No, I want visibility. Here it is. I don't want it to be selectable. I don't want it to show up in the viewport anymore, and I don't want it to come out in the render especially. The render is the one that matters. Okay. So now before I get into the animation, I'm going to go to the scripting part of it. Scripting's over here. And I have it in test mode right now where it's going to make the camera fall around in 45-degree angles. So let's try that. I'm going to run it. You can see the camera going around. It looks like it's facing the object as it goes around, so that's all working. That's good, but it's not going to actually export anything yet because remember my script that I made is based on the keyframes of the animation. It doesn't just take a range of frames from 0 to n and render all n frames for every perspective. It just takes all keyframes it defines for the current animation and renders each of those for each perspective. So I need to set up an animation now. I'm going to actually save the project I have right now. Let's call this a live example blend. Okay, set blender file. Okay, now I'm going to go over to the animation real quick. Now, what you have to do if you want to animate is you want to select everything that you care about to be considered, right? And all these things could be in a group. That would make it probably more sensible and sane, but just for now, I'm going to add all these things to be tracked. And I'm going to insert a keyframe with I. So you have to say what you want to be tracked. I'm going to do location and rotation. So there we go. I now have a frame. Now I need to set how many frames there are. This probably doesn't matter because I'm only tracking keyframes, but you know, just to be safe, I want to do 0 to 0, so it's just one frame, frame 0. Okay. Those inserted now. For some reason, when you insert the frame, it kind of like disappears over here. But I know if you go to layout and you go to view, and then you say only show keyframes for selected channels, you can check that. You can see the frame. And that's actually useful because sometimes I've had issues where the animation bugs out and I have to delete it and remake it. What'll happen is the camera will only take a picture from the initial perspective, and even though it's being rotated, it acts like it's not moving as it takes pictures, and you get the same frame rendered over and over again. So hopefully that doesn't happen now. I'm going to go back to the scripting, and I'm going to just save this. I need to give it a name. So the export path, I'm going to say live example. That's what I'm going to call the path it exports to. So if I go down here, you can see right now there's that human one I made earlier. If I run it now, actually it's in test mode. Let's get rid of test mode. Yep. Okay, no more test mode. I'll run it, and it's going to make a new directory called live example, where it's going to put the one frame of animation for 8 perspectives. So it should be a total of 8 files. So I'll run it. There's live example. There's 8 files in here. Let's take a look at them. You can see it's 45-degree angles of rotation each time. So that's the basic setup. Hopefully that helps future me and anybody else who's watching this video. Good luck, and maybe see you in another video.